So let's start with a few questions. So Charmaine, is Gen AI living up to the hype?
Look, it's a great question, Tim, and I think, Gen AI and agents have become such buzzwords that it's a little bit difficult for private businesses to kind of cut through the marketing and jargon and actually work out like how they generate real business value out of Gen AI. And look, perhaps 12 months ago, private businesses were trying to find the use cases with the scale in private to deliver those gains. But what we've seen in the last 6 months is a real hockey stick in the improvement of the models, which means that 6 months ago, what a business problem that needed a custom model are now being solved for by people with no coding expertise with off-the-shelf solutions. There's now really good evidence that there's a 10 to 15% productivity gain just with out-of-the-box tools. What I would also say, though, is that Gen AI is not a silver bullet. The companies that are actually realising these productivity gains are the ones with good leadership and strategy, good change management, excellent upskilling. So there's still, some rolling up of sleeves here to be done by us as leaders to really liberate these productivity gains.
I think probably a couple of months ago when we were talking around AI, one of the questions was where do I start? How do I get into it? Do I dip my toe in? Maybe could you provide some examples of how you're seeing clients implementing tools in their business today, right? And we're talking about almost the first phase of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got some use cases that hopefully the audience will identify with. So, classifications of transactions is a really great one as we head into, compliance. So, I'm sure that resonates, like doing that line by line classification, especially under time pressure, can be really tedious and holding up key people resources. So that's a great use case. But what I thought I might do is show you a little bit of a demo of Gen AI in action. So one client was facing a large backlog of contracts that they needed to get through. What we did is, so what you'll see on screen now is a contract analyzer tool. So it ingests a contract. What it's doing is providing a heat map according to a checklist that it's been fed, so highlighting clauses that might be potentially problematic. That it's alone is useful, but it's gone a step further to highlight what obligations you have under that contract, so you know what actions you need to take to be compliant. And now what it's doing is suggesting perhaps some better wording to those troublesome clauses. Now, of course, you need a human in the loop. We're not suggesting that you go and act on these drafts, but what it does do is it really cuts down the time that you and your people are spending in the weeds and allows you more time for that special human judgment. So elevating or highlighting the things where you should be spending your time to create value in your business and de-risk contractual obligations as you head into those. So that's just a practical example.
So that tool, I mean, look great. I obviously wasn't following it in terms of the scale, but talk to me about how you build that. Like, is that bespoke for a client? Can a client access that off the shelf? How does that work?
Yeah, so that is that's the result of a chain of custom GPTs. So we're now at the point where, with good upskilling, like any other kind of good implementation, you don't kind of like throw a new system at your people and expect them to just intuitively be experts. But with good upskilling, people now with no coding expertise can solve business process problems with custom GPTs in an off-the-shelf product. So we are seeing, real productivity gains being generated there in private businesses.
That's impressive, because presumably that's a high volume of contracts got through in a pretty short amount of time, which would otherwise take you and I hours to read. And if it's late at night, you might miss the clauses. This seems to be picking up the key clauses. It's pretty impressive.
Absolutely.
And we're also seeing a lot of businesses having concerns about data security. So again, let's put a Gen AI hat on. How can you allay those fears about security, and how can they get started safely?
Yeah, it's great to see private businesses asking really sensible questions before they jump in. We've got a 4-step process that we use to help our clients get started with Gen AI or accelerate their journey. A couple of early stage considerations would be governance, Tim, so making sure that you set some guardrails, you document, you communicate how you're going to assess use cases, etc. On data security specifically, pay for licenses. So enterprise grade SaaS products like ChatGPT for Enterprise or Copilot or similar, these are as safe as emails. They're not using your data to train their models. So if we give our people good enterprise grade licenses, tools that are excellent and fit for purpose, then they don't have an incentive to put your confidential data in free consumer grade products. So there's a couple of things that you can do to make that first step into Gen AI safe and deliver an ROI for your business.
And they're off the shelf, license fee, inexpensive.
Very inexpensive, approximately $20 a month. So, we are seeing huge productivity gains as a return on investment for those, that pretty modest investment. But it is more than just the expenditure on the licenses. Where you're really going to unlock these productivity gains is through investing in your people by upskilling. There's a big difference in a person who's using these tools to redraft an email as opposed to, say, being able to configure a custom workflow.
So again, bring it back to our CFOs. In your experience, how do CFOs influence that within the organisation? Because it's great to give me a product and have it on my desktop sitting there and I just leave it.
Yeah.
How do we influence use and take up?
Yeah, again, we need to invest in training, but then also we need to step up as leaders. Atlassian released a great piece of research that indicated that people are 4 times more likely to use these tools if they see their leaders also doing that. So there's a great call out to us to step up on this front.
And presumably, sounding like the old person on the call, if we're not doing it, the younger generation expect us to be doing it, and they'll just take us. They'll essentially go past us in that AI journey.
Absolutely. Like, our people are using these tools whether we like it or not. So I think we can take some really sensible steps to give them great tools, provide governance and the training so that we can actually harness that interest in adopting the new technologies to liberate those productivity gains in our businesses.
And you mentioned something really important to me, which is the human in the loop. We don't, as leaders, want to be, using a tool like this and assuming it's right, assuming it's doing what our customer needs. Can you talk a little bit about the human in the loop?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is, part of good upskilling, Tim, is teaching our people how to harness the tools in a constructive way that aligns with our corporate governance. So, for example, we might want to make it really clear that Gen AI is a really useful tool to say, analyse an invoice, but the actual classification needs to be reviewed by a human. We use it to summarise resumes, but actually the hiring decision needs to be made by a human. So it's not a substitute for human judgment. What it actually allows us is to be freed up from being in the weeds so we can spend more time on that judgment work.
Right. And again, AI doesn't necessarily need to transfer the whole business at once. It sounds like it can happen almost process at a time.
Exactly, and that's part of the 4-step process that we take our clients on this journey. So really framing up a top-down approach for where we think the benefits should be, and a staged approach to really focus the attention on those areas so that you can be really clear about the progress that you're making and also be in a position to measure the return on investment.
It's fantastic. Thanks, Charmaine. There's some great examples there and practical steps, and I'm looking forward to more examples in future sessions early next year.